Welcome to the Career Glow Up Show. This is where neuroscience meets real leadership and feminine power isn't a weakness. And in fact, we're going to look at how it can become your edge in the world of work. I'm Rahila Narejo, and I am a neuropsychologist and executive career coach. And for over 20 years, I have been working as a human resource consultant, working with over 100 of the Fortune 500 companies across the globe. And I have written a career advice column by the name of Workplace Sanity for over 10 years for a large daily newspaper. So it was a weekly advice column, and now what I am doing is I thought, why not bring all of this experience, all of this expertise in human resources, understanding what organizations look at when they're hiring, when they're developing, when they're promoting employees and individuals, and also my work as an executive coach helping people in their careers, how to get a job, how to get recognized, how to showcase your results, how to get promoted, how to influence. Mix it all together with my background in neuropsychology and really create something interesting, not just interesting, but very useful for career professionals, especially for women, because that's what I am. And I want to help other women also advance in their careers. So, this is the very first episode, and I created this show because I've lived the story, right? I consider myself pretty smart. I was prepared. I'm accomplished right now, but it took me a while to get here. But somehow along the way, I found that it didn't matter how much credibility I had or credentials I had or what great work I did, I was still invisible. And in fact, it was a very specific incident that really made me realize the importance of self promotion. And this very first episode is one of a three-part series that I'm calling the Career Power Move series. And in this very first episode, we're going to be talking about the art of self promotion. How can you position yourself in your career, in your field, so that you get the visibility that you deserve? Because believe me, being the world's best kept secret is not a good career strategy, and it's not going to help you. Plus, it's not going to help those organizations and even individuals that can potentially benefit from your experience and expertise. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you first in this episode a little bit of the science. What science am I going to be talking about? I'm going to be talking about the psychology of influence. So, in this episode, it's going to be the science. In the next episode of the Career Glow Up Show, we're going to start applying each of the psychological principles of influence practically into your career. So you want to follow me. You want to make sure you bookmark alerts. I don't know if you can get alerted when I do post something, but you don't want to miss a single episode of this show, especially this first three-part series. So are you ready? I'm super excited. Let's jump in to our first episode, Mastering Self Promotion. Now, in this very first episode, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to walk you through something that I call the Pentagon of Influence. Now, a pentagon, okay, it has five sides. So basically, that should give you a clue that there are five elements I'm going to be introducing you to that, when combined and used in a very specific sequence, right, in your communication, whether it's face to face communication or it's through email communication, you will actually start to master this science and the art of influencing people. And this is very important, especially when it comes to our topic today, which is self promotion. So, what do we mean by self promotion, and why are we even talking about this? Well, unfortunately, a lot of people think, maybe it's you as well, you might be thinking this, that I just need to work more or work harder, right? And just do a really good job. And then eventually I'll get noticed. Someone is going to recognize me. Someone's going to acknowledge all the good work I'm doing. And that's going to lead to my growth, my promotion, new opportunities. Well, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, if we lived in an ideal world, which unfortunately we don't, perhaps that would work. Okay, you work hard, you get rewarded for your hard work. But unfortunately, that right now, that sounds like a fairy tale, like as if you're living in La La Land. Okay, and I don't want you to be stuck in La La Land. What we're going to be talking about is that work is a prerequisite. You cannot grow in your career if you don't do work. Okay, you got to do some work. But more work or longer hours or extra work is not the differentiator that's going to get you ahead in your career. In fact, you might have noticed people around you who do grow, who do accelerate, they're not necessarily working harder or longer. They're doing something else, and perhaps you're not doing that special thing. So don't think about that. What I'm going to talk about in this first episode of the Career Glow Up Show is that, oh, work hard. Rahila doesn't give that type of advice. Work harder, work longer, do more work. No, that's because that's not psychology. That is just being a laborer. And in fact, and that's not going to help you even. That's not the secret to success. You got to do work, but it's not more work that's going to get you ahead. What we're going to be talking about is on top of the work that you do, there is something you need to add, which is like the cherry on top of your ice cream sundae. And if that cherry is not there, all that work basically is not going to help you. It's going to go unnoticed. And why is it going to go unnoticed? Well, today I'm going to walk you through the Pentagon of Influence. You're going to start to understand what is influence, what are some of the factors that gives you this power over people so that they recognize you, they acknowledge your contribution, they appreciate you. And that's the cherry on the cake that or the cherry on this ice cream sundae that we're going to be learning today. Now, I'm not going to talk about this is not about playing politics. Okay? No, we don't do that. It's not about being ruthless or cutthroat or hustling more. No, 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 no. We don't do that, ladies, especially ladies. We don't do that. And it's also not about being pitchy and salesy like a used car salesman and just constantly talking about yourself and how great you are. Nobody wants to do that because that doesn't feel good. And we want to feel good when we self promote. But in order to do that, you need to understand the principles behind it. So I'm going to teach you what are the five principles. And once you understand these principles, and then as we go on in this series, I'm going to teach you how to apply those principles so that you start to self promote without the sleaze. And if you're thinking, but I'm an introvert, I feel shy, I'm hesitant, the techniques I'm going to be teaching you work for anybody. Whether you're an extrovert, you're naturally very people oriented and outspoken, or you're like me, believe me, I called myself the queen of introverts. Like, I'm so shy. When I first started my career, I could literally not talk to people looking at them eye to eye. Like, I would look down on the ground. It was like deadly shy. But then I kind of got over it. I still get shy and hesitant. But then I realized that, there's no guardian angel, there's no career angel that's going to come down from the sky and speak up for you, promote you. You need to get over it and you need to do something for yourself. And the best thing you can do is to learn the art of self promotion. And you don't have to worry because I'm going to teach you the psychology, the science behind it in this framework that I put together called the Pentagon of Influence. So there's five principles behind the psychology of influence that make up this pentagon. So, are you ready? I'm super excited to dive into each one of these principles. So, let's get started. So, number one, the first principle. Now, I'm going to get a little nerdy on you. I'm going to kind of really get into the science of it all. Uh, Let me know once you watch this, once you go through it. Do take some notes as you're watching and listening. And let me know if you like the science, if you want more of the science, right? Because then that's going to help me with future episodes of the Career Glow Up Show as well. Now, I love the science because it really helps me to understand why certain strategies and tactics work and why certain strategies and tactics fail. They literally flop on their face. So, the first principle that I want you to understand is the brain notices threat, not reward. Now, this is really important to understand because you might have experienced this. Like you do a really good job. Maybe your boss asked you to put a presentation together, and that too, the last minute, and you really did a fabulous job and you delivered an amazing presentation. And you're kind of looking expectantly towards your boss for some type of appreciation, recognition, acknowledgement. And they're just like, oh, okay. And they look the other way as if, no big deal. It's not that your boss didn't notice or is not recognizing or appreciating it. There's a science behind this that you're going to understand when I go the whole principle here. But has this ever happened to you? You did one little boo boo, one small mistake, right? One small mistake, really negligible. But that mistake, your boss immediately grabs onto. And by the end of the year, he doesn't grab onto it right at that moment. Even at the end of the year, that's the only thing they remember, the mistake, that one little slip up that you happen to have, right? It's not that your boss is a bad person. It's because your boss is a human, right? Hopefully, and they have a brain. And the brain notices threat, not reward. What does that mean? It means that this is instinctual. It's a survival mechanism that all human beings have. And in fact, 5x, what that 5x number means is your brain has 5 times more threat detection neural circuitry than reward detection. Why does the brain focus on threat 5 times more than potential reward or good things? It focuses on bad things. Is because there's no danger from the good, but there's potential life and death, right? Danger if we're not alerted to and aware of, and we're not zoomed in on the potential threats around us. So people around you are not bad or mean. It's just how their brains are wired. And your brain is wired the same way. Is that we zoom in first on threat. And it's very rarely that we will even recognize and acknowledge reward. Now, this number 5 is a very magical number. And in the next episode, I'm going to share with you 5 is the number of times you need to repeat a single message in order for someone's brain to actually have it register into their memory, okay, especially their conscious memory. So please recognize that people around you are not bad if they're not noticing your good work. It's your fault. I'm here to tell you, if people are not recognizing you, if people are not acknowledging you for the good work that you're doing, then it's not their fault because they're just being human and they're just operating their brain like any human being does. It's your fault that you're not understanding how the brain works and you're not promoting yourself. You have to promote yourself, and not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times, not just 4 times, 5 times. If you want something that you've done or achieved, some result that you've delivered, to be registered in an individual's long term memory. How many times? 5 times. Okay. Now, how do you do that? Join me on the next episode because I'm going to go through the how of that and give you some little tips there. But this episode, let's just dive into the Pentagon of Influence. I really want you to first grasp and understand what are those five principles that, in combination, when we understand them and we use them in our interactions with people, we start to develop this really, really critical skill in anyone's success, whether you're an employee or you're an employer, you're an entrepreneur, you're a salaried person, you're a leader. Influence is critical in all of our lives and success. So that's the first principle. Do you remember what it was? The brain focuses on threat and not reward. Now, what's the second principle? Now, second principle is also very interesting, and you might have noticed this in your own experiences. And what is this principle? It's basically what the scientists have discovered through the research. I'm going to explain the research to you. Is that social pain? What is social pain? Feeling bad, feeling ignored, feeling rejected, feeling excluded, feeling disrespected, feeling put down, belittled, right? Ousted. This is social pain. It's how when we feel bad in relation to our interactions with other people. The brain equates social pain and physical pain as being the same thing. What do I mean by physical pain? Physical pain is basically physical pain. Like someone whacks you on the head with a bat. Ouch, that's going to hurt. And if someone ignores you, you're talking to your boss and you're trying to share, some project or something that you're dealing with, and they're texting on their phone, they're not listening to you. Ouch. In fact, if you look at this picture, which is taken from a research study, and you see the regions of the brain that light up. So the neuroscientists, they put people into fMRI scanners and they expose them to physical pain. And how they basically do it is they use like a heating pad and they start to increase the pain until it actually becomes painful, the heat of the pad. And then they can see the areas of the brain that light up when the person experiences pain. So notice the central red area in the bottom picture and on the left side, that little area when the physical pain is being perceived by the brain. But the researchers also expose people while they're in the fMRI to social pain. And how do they do that? So while a person's lying inside the fMRI, they have a little video screen in front of them on the roof of it. And on the screen, a person comes on and they look at the person and they basically make these like disappointed faces, like, like, like really like looking at them like as if they're disappointed or disgusted by them. And so that triggers social pain. Like, why are you doing this to me? They feel bad. And so the researchers find that which are the parts of the brain that light up or activate when someone is experiencing social pain. And do you notice in these two diagrams, the central regions for both the social pain and physical pain, there's overlap. The left side of the brain, you can see there's overlap. So basically, what this second principle tells us is that physical pain, whether you hit someone on the head with a baseball bat or you ignore them, it's painful, equally painful, or if not more painful, when someone is on the receiving end of social pain, because physical pain heals, right? If you're broken a bone or if you stub a toe, it heals. You don't constantly remember it, and it doesn't start hurting again if you do even remember it or recall it. But every time you recall an incident where someone ignored you, disrespected you, excluded you, it triggers that same emotional response. So it can even actually be amplified by the person's own thinking. So they can add to that experience and make it even more painful every time they recall it. So, what does that mean for you? And if you need to influence people, this is really important for you to understand, to be very conscious of whether you are triggering social pain or social reward in your interactions with people around you. And the principle that you need to follow is, in every interaction, you want to do everything you possibly can to minimize pain and maximize reward of that interaction. How do you do that? It's going to be in our next coming episodes, right? But understand this second really important principle of how the brain is processing information. All right. So that's this number two. Number three, second principle about the brain, which is really important for us to understand so that we can apply it when we want to have influence and we want to promote ourselves and have people perceive us as being high potentials or very credible or being experts. So, the third principle you need to know is that we feel before we think. And in fact, that's actually a good thing. And what does that mean, Rahila? Okay, so let me give you a little bit of the science behind it. Now, first understand, how does the brain receive information? It receives it through our five senses, right? We see, we hear, we smell, we touch, we taste, right? So there's five senses that are channeling signals from our environment into our brain. And interestingly, this signal travels from the brain stem through the central region of the brain, which is called the limbic system, all the way up to the frontal portion of the brain, or the prefrontal cortex, which we call our executive brain, where the logical thinking happens. So it goes from our brainstem, which basically handles all our instinctive survival responses, through our limbic, which is our emotional brain. So every time we feel some emotion, it's because the limbic part of the brain has interpreted as something either good for us or bad for us. If it interprets something, incoming information, as good, it releases certain neurochemicals and hormones that are released in our systems and they make us feel good. Okay. Or if it perceives something as bad, it releases a different set of neurochemicals and hormones that, when released, they make us feel bad, right? Or some danger, alert, alert. Now, the brain does not like to think, right? Very rarely do we actually use our logical brain. We have a tendency to be more automatic. We have a tendency to use our primitive responses, our instinctual responsive. And if something is not familiar, we might process a signal, incoming signal, with our logical brain because it's new. We've never really seen it before, so we got to think about it. Now, this is important for you because people already have a perception about you. When they hear your name, it triggers certain feelings. And that feeling is what we call your personal brand. It's what emotion is triggered, not what people think logically about you. Or, they analyze your resume, or they sit down and they contemplate all your experience and all the good things you've done. Nobody's brain is going to do that because it takes a lot of energy to do that, blood glucose energy, and the brain wants to conserve energy, so the brain is going to automatically default to emotions. What does a person feel when they see your name, hear your name, or there's a mention of you? What is the emotional reaction that they get? And in our terminology, that's branding, right? That's what every product, every company, every service, what is a brand? It's the emotional response people get when they are exposed to that organization, that product, or that service. So you are also a product, you are also a service provider, and you also have a brand. You already have a brand. The question is, what is your brand currently triggering? What emotional response does it trigger? If it's triggering something positive, good job. If it's not, then you need to revisit and you need to figure out how to start associating your name with a positive emotion. Okay, so that's the third principle, right? The brain feels before it thinks, and it doesn't prefer to think, it just likes to go by the feeling. So you want to make sure you have managed that feeling, that perception of you in a positive way. All right, so that's three. I know that's a big one there. Now, number four. Now, this is actually a quotation. Number four is actually a quotation. This is a quotation from Dr. David Rock from the Neuro Leadership Institute. And he says, if you have a brain, then you are biased. Now, stop kidding yourself. You are biased. Okay. So if any one of you says, no, I'm not biased, I'm so neutral, it's just not possible because it means that you don't have a brain. Because bias is the way our brain automatically or shortcuts decision making. Like I was telling you, the brain does not like to think. It likes to go on perception and emotional responses or instinctual responses. And that is basically a bias. It's a preference that the brain has. So if you have a brain, and if anyone you work with or anyone you want to influence has a brain, which believe me, they do, their brain is biased. Now, that's not such a bad thing. We always talk about, okay, bias is bad. Yes, it's bad if it's a negative bias. But actually, I like to look at bias as a way of influence. If we understand bias, then we can activate favorable bias. Now, every time I've taught people, like in interviewing skills, like how to give an interview, 80% of an interview is managing the first impression and the bias of the interviewer to be in your favor. Similarly, that what is that? Even on the job, if you can manage people's bias and trigger the positive bias that's in your favor, guess what? You're going to have influence over the person. Okay, so very important. If you have a brain, then you are biased. So that means everyone is biased. Don't be afraid of bias, but understand how to activate favorable bias in your favor. Okay, so that's number four. And the fifth principle is basically mind control. How many of you would love to control somebody's mind? Right? Wouldn't that be great? Okay, well, it's not as hard as you might think, especially when you understand the neuroscience behind it. And there is a very strong phenomenon called priming in play, especially in mind control. Now, what do we mean by priming? I'm going to give you a little example. Now, here you see there are two lists. Let's look at the first list. Okay, let's read them through. And I want you to complete the last word in the list. Okay, so red, blue, orange, yellow. Did you think green? All right, okay, now keep that in mind. Let's go to the next list. Okay, let's read through, and then I want you to fill in the blank. Plum, apple, orange, banana. Did your mind automatically think grape? Right? You just got a taste of the power of priming. Basically, we can actually lead or guide a brain, even our own brain, to think a certain way through the input that we expose it to, right? The little triggers that we expose it to, the environmental factors that we expose it to. In this case, the last word in both lists start with G and R, but the way you filled in the blank for those two words was very different. It was dependent on what came before it. So we can actually use this power of priming deliberately. So in when you're trying to influence people, when you're trying to create a perception of you as a high potential, as a strong performer, as a leader, then priming is one of the tools you want to bring into your toolkit. So, what have I just shared with you? In this first episode of the Career Glow Up Show, I've exposed you to the five principles of the Pentagon of Influence and what's the science behind each of the principles, and what is the action you need to be doing to make sure that you develop this ability to influence the perception of people around you. Okay, especially we're talking about self perception, managing your perception. So it begins with understanding how the brain works. So let's just recap. So number one, threat and reward. Okay, so the brain focuses more on threat, not on reward. So you have to self promote, you have to continuously highlight your good, the reward, because people's brains will not focus on the good automatically. You have to take some action to do it. Now, how do you do it? That's where the other principles come in. Number two, how you make people feel when they are around you. You want to make sure you maximize social reward. You want to make people feel good. Now, how do you make people feel good? Upcoming episode, I'm going to give you the strategies for doing each one of these things. Number three, you need to work on your personal brand. It's the feeling people get when they hear your name, when there's mention of your name. Okay. So it's an emotion, and people make decisions, take action, not based on logical thinking. They do it all based on emotion. So if you want to guide someone's behavior, you need to make sure the emotion is aligned with the desired behavior. So that's your personal brand. And we're going to get into that in an upcoming episode as well. Number four, you want to not be afraid of bias. You want to understand how to activate favorable bias that's going to help you and not hurt you. And we're going to learn how to do that as well. And the fifth principle in the Pentagon of Influence is deliberate priming. It's exposing the brain of the person you want to influence to different stimuli so that you direct their thinking and behavior in a way that is favorable to you. Now, this is the science behind influence, and it's the key to understanding how to master self promotion. Self promotion is influencing people to perceive you in a positive light, right? To perceive you, your work, your credibility, your experience in a positive light, because once you're perceived in a positive light, then other positive outcomes can come about, right? So these are the five principles. This is the first episode of the Career Glow Up Show. Drop your questions, drop your comments below. Let me know which principle really clicked with you, which principle you have questions on. I'm going to answer your questions down below. And then tune in, okay, tune in to the next episode where we're going to take a deep dive now into each one of these principles, right, in the Pentagon of Influence. And I'm not just going to explain the what, but in the next episode, I'm going to give you the how, the strategy, the tactic, what to do, what to say, what to write in order to promote yourself as a high potential, as a leader, however you want to promote yourself, however you want to mold the perception of you in the minds of people around you. You're going to learn how to do that. So thank you so much for joining in into the premiere episode of the Career Glow Up Show. I'm super excited because I'm coming back on with this type of live training after 2 years. And I really missed it. And I really wanted to start sharing some of the things that I have been working on with my executive coaching clients. And so that maybe it can help someone out there as well in their career journey. So thank you so much for joining in, and do connect with me so that you don't miss it when the next episode drops. Take care. See you next time.